Story 1. He never drank alcohol and never thought much about it. However, when he drank in a group of new people, he became aggressive and physically attacked another guy, almost attacking me as well. The next morning, he claimed he didn't remember anything, but in the following days, he became angry because the others excluded him and said he was dangerous. It wasn't even that bad. I just hit someone, he said. He clearly remembered everything and somehow blamed me. I was terrified and decided to remove him from my life. Story 2. She adopted a cat and a few months later became tired of him and tried to send him back to the shelter. Since that moment, I gained a cat and lost a bad person. It is one of the best things that ever happened to me. Many years later, he is happy, loved, and cared for. Story 3. Every time I addressed something that bothered me, he responded with, "I guess I'm just a horrible boyfriend then." Story 4. I set a date with a girl, and she suggested we meet at a restaurant at 7 p.m. I arrived on time and had a reservation. I sat down and waited, but time passed without any text from her. I messaged her to ask if she was on her way, but received no response. After waiting for another 25 minutes, I texted again and then waited for 10 more minutes before asking for the check. I saw some friends at the bar and had a few drinks. The girl finally showed up 2 hours later and asked if I was ready for dinner. I was surprised and pointed out that I had texted her an hour and a half earlier and never received a reply. I mentioned that I had already moved on with my evening. There was no apology, nothing. I suggested we could reschedule for another day. She agreed, but I never heard from her again to set up another date. In summary, I don't appreciate when people do not respect my time or communicate if they are significantly delayed. Story 5. I threw a rock at a duck, an innocent duck swimming peacefully in the pond. I randomly picked up a rock and hit the duck. I never saw it again. Story 6. I was doing the dishes, unaware that we were in a fight. While scrubbing a pot, I saw a bottle of bleach fly into my vision and explode against the wall in front of me, followed by a woman screaming at me. That was when I realized I wasn't going through this situation anymore. I grabbed a hand towel, dried my hands, picked up my small dog, and walked out the door to my parents' house, a little over a mile away. Story 7. After almost 20 years of marriage, I found a box of condoms in his underwear drawer while putting away laundry. Several were missing. We never used condoms. He tried to tell me he had them since before we got married. I had put his underwear away hundreds of times and we had moved twice. I had cleaned every room in that house multiple times, yet I did not see the condoms until that day. That marked the end of our marriage. Story 8. When someone is too flirty with others, you can tell they are trying to keep their options open. Some individuals are always looking for an opportunity to improve their situation. Story 9. Have you ever known everything about a person in 2 days, and then realized they never asked what you do for a living or anything else about yourself? Story 10. She criticized a waitress for smiling at me. To be clear, it wasn't a seductive smile, just a friendly smile a waitress gives everyone. Her insecurities were very apparent. I finished our meal and gave the waitress a generous tip for dealing with that. Afterward, I dropped her off at her apartment. She asked if I wanted to come up, and I told her I would be blocking her number and that she should be embarrassed for her behavior. Story 11. My boyfriend of 2 weeks showed up outside the cinema I went to with my best friend in a different town and said, "Did you really think I wouldn't come? I wasn't invited." Also, if I said I would hang out this afternoon and wasn't there exactly on time, he said, "I don't like liars." Story 12. She drank too much alcohol. It was normal for her to have a few drinks on weekdays and to be blackout drunk almost every weekend. Otherwise, she was really nice, but I couldn't handle it anymore. If I tried to encourage her to drink a little less, she always called me boring or said something like, "It's normal in my family. Everyone drinks." Story 13. His male friend was sexually assaulted and robbed while traveling alone in a different country, and he thought it was funny. I asked him if he would have the same reaction if it had happened to a woman, and he said, "It's different. All the love I had for him just vanished." Story 14. When I discovered he had 6 felony charges pending against him, which he had not told me about because it was family business. I was shocked. We had been married for 4 years. Story 15. She would not get out of the car until I walked around and opened her door for her. Because my life is hard and I deserve it. And when I say she would not, I mean ever. If we were just hanging out and went to Walmart for ice cream or beer, or if we were going to the river to swim, I had to open her door every time. It wasn't opening her door that bothered me. It was the quote. Story 16. Not quite a relationship, but I went back to his house to use his phone because my mobile phone had died, and this was around 18 years ago. He came out with his shirt off, which was already a red flag. Even more alarming was the fact that he had a swastika tattoo. Story 17. I changed the TV channel whenever an attractive man appeared on the screen and said, "You aren't watching that." Story 18. Technically, I was in high school and breaking up with the guy when he threw a red flag. He realized I was ending things and got very angry, more than I had ever seen him. He made me promise that I would attend his prom with him. He was obsessed with not having a date for his prom in May. We went to different schools, and he didn't want me to tell my friends that we had broken up. I told him that I was not going to do that. He responded, "Well, I'm not going to tell my friends that we broke up." I told him that he could tell his friends whatever he wanted. I broke up with him in January. We hadn't even talked about prom yet. I was so scared and freaked out by the conversation and how visibly angry he got that I just told him I would go with him so that I could leave. He wanted me to stay longer so that his parents didn't realize we were breaking up. He was talking through tightly clenched teeth, and I just wanted to get out of his house. I blocked him everywhere, but he ended up calling my house in early May. My dad took the call and it was great. I only heard my dad's side of the conversation. "Who is this? Who? Didn't she break up with you months ago? Prom. When was the last time the two of you even talked? January, you say? Look, she's not going with you to prom. She doesn't want to see you. Lose our number. And if you call us again, I'll be calling the police." I never felt so vindicated ending a relationship. Story 19. He just lied for no reason. I'd ask him what he had for lunch that day, and he'd say pizza. But then I'd see a wrapper for a burger when I opened the trash can. I figured if he could lie about trivial things, he could lie about much worse. Story 20. He kept mentioning his ex-wife in every conversation. First date? Ex-wife. Movie night? Ex-wife. Grocery shopping? Somehow still his ex-wife. It was the fastest block button press of my life. Story 21. His mom called during our first date, and he put me on the phone and introduced me as his girlfriend. Then he explained the Phantom Menace to me. Story 22. This is a rather unfortunate story. In high school, there was a strange trend of boys threatening suicide to get the attention of girls. It was obvious that these were not genuine cries for help but attempts to garner sympathy or manipulate girls into staying in toxic relationships. I made a joke to my then-boyfriend that if he did that to me, I would push him off the roof. A boy had threatened to jump off the school roof when his girlfriend wanted to break up. It was quite a situation. For months later, this boy became the worst boyfriend. Turned out he cheated on me and was trying to get me to break up with him, or at least that's what I think. It's a long, messy story, and we were teenagers, so everything felt like the end of the world. We broke up. A few months later, he seemed to regret it. I had already moved on and wanted nothing more than an apology from him. One night, he called me while high. He started going on a rant about how I was the best thing in his life and how he ruined it, claiming that his life was terrible now. He then dropped the bomb. "If you don't forgive me, I guess I'm worthless, and I should just kill myself." I just laughed at him and told him, "Well, good luck with that," and hung up. I never spoke to him again. Spoiler alert. More than 10 years later, he is still alive and has never attempted suicide. Also, a side note before anyone gets upset with me. If I thought for a second that this threat was real, I would have taken it seriously. However, I have been clinically depressed and have known people who were so depressed they attempted suicide. They don't call you at 2 a.m. high and tell you they will kill themselves if you don't forgive them. In fact, there are hardly any signs at all. He was trying to manipulate me. He knew it, I knew it, and anyone listening in would have known it too. Story 23. No personal retention. I don't expect you to remember everything about me, but when I find myself repeating details about my work or my dog, which are the only two things I talk about every day, it would be good to pay attention to one of those details. Story 24. He yelled and cursed at me while driving recklessly for an entire hour, leaving me feeling trapped under his control. Story 25. Keeping the truth about sexual history with a close friend hidden. They sweet talk and stay up together, with her touching him intimately in front of me. Story 26. Penny pinching on everything we did together, concerned about every dollar spent on dining out, while treating himself to the finest things and experiences. I knew I wouldn't want a husband like that. Story 27. I suspected that she had another man or boyfriend, and once that was confirmed, I ended things. Story 28. I was the problem. I was self-centered and emotionally immature. It took a girl who refused to accept her own share of blame and consistently manipulated me for me to realize I was looking into a mirror. I have moved on and improved myself, but from what I hear, she hasn't changed. Story 29. Disrespecting consent is unacceptable. A person assumed it was acceptable to touch me inappropriately without prior discussion. They continued until I yelled, "Stop," multiple times and attempted to remove their hand myself. This was traumatizing. Story 30. When the bare minimum seems like a lot for them, such as asking for respect and honesty, how does that make me ungrateful? Story 31. Jealousy, especially over things like what I wore or when I did my makeup to go out, marked that relationship, which lasted only 2 weeks. Story 32. Asking someone a question you already know the answer to and observing them lie to you without any indications of dishonesty. Story 33. I was the red flag, I guess. After we had been dating for a few weeks, I let her know I used to be into drugs and had used substances like ecstasy, LSD, cocaine, and marijuana. However, I told her I hadn't done any of that in about 4 years. She took it well, or so I thought, until she texted me the next day, saying that due to my past, she couldn't be with me. She was worried I was secretly addicted and concerned about what her friends and family might think. Story 34. He told his family and friends we were getting married as if it were a done deal, but he never mentioned it to me. From my perspective, it was a casual relationship. Then he stalked me for years afterward. I had no idea, but he knew far more about my life than I could have imagined, even several years after we broke up. Story 35. Not all at once, but 3 red flags. Cheating, talking about politics constantly, criticizing you for everything and arguing about trivial matters all the time. Story 36. Manipulation followed by playing the victim. I wish I had ended it earlier than I did. Nothing was ever enough. Story 37. I was happily paying for everything until she started complaining about occasional expenses she incurred here and there. I had been working on site for about a week, and she had been coming home at 1 p.m. every day, so she made food for us once or twice. One day, she went to the grocery store and got a few items for dinner, then immediately texted me that she spent too much on food and we needed to talk. The conversation quickly shifted to her feeling it was unfair that she made food for us every day just because she got home earlier than I did. Keep in mind, I paid for every single date we went on, including transportation, rent, and everything else. When we met, she quickly quit her job and moved into my place. She would want to go to the store for a snack, expecting me to pay for everything, even for small items. I had to ask her to leave. Additionally, she ensured I paid for everything one last time, as you might expect. Story 38. I was 27 and started dating someone I knew from dating one of his friends when I was 22. I hadn't seen him in years and happened to run into him at a doctor's office. We talked, laughed, reminisced about the past, and exchanged numbers. The next morning, I found a box with a card on my car's windshield. Inside the box was a rose, and the card said, "I dreamed of holding you in my arms the very first time I saw you. I wish it had been me, but you chose Christian. Give me the chance to prove to you that I can be the one you'll love forever. Tony." He was drop-dead gorgeous, and I thought it was very sweet, but I was constantly busy and, for some reason, always played hard to get, so I didn't call him. 3 days later on a Friday, I walked out my door, and on my deck was a box with a dozen roses and a card. I waited for your call. Let me take you out to dinner tonight. We'll go somewhere quiet. Italian, seafood, anything you want. We'll walk along the beach and look at the stars. Yours always, Tony. Well, he hooked me. I gave in and called him. After the fourth date, we were together every night. Soon after, he started spending the night at my house. He began calling me more when we weren't together, asking where I was, what I was doing, who I was with, and more. About 4 months into the relationship, we decided to go to a local beach tavern to watch a live band play. I absolutely loved the drums and had actually played them when I was younger. I was having a great time, but after being there for maybe 20 minutes, he leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Why do you keep staring at the drummer?" I said, "What, seriously?" I looked at him, and there was nothing but fierce anger in his eyes. Then he said, "I think it would be wise to put your head down. You're here with me." My body froze because I was petrified. Then he said, "I think it's time to leave." I told him I had to go to the bathroom first. I couldn't even think, so I don't know how the words came out of my mouth. I went and called the emergency services. I told them where I was and my home address because that's where we were going. Thank God I did, because as soon as we started driving down the road, he backhanded me right in the face and started yelling about me wanting other guys and cheating. I had blood pouring out of my nose all over me. I grew up in the small town we were in, so the police officers who watched me grow up surrounded the car at gunpoint as soon as we turned my corner. They dragged him out of the car and slammed his head into the ground. He was arrested, and his bail was set so high that there was no way for him to get out. He lost his job as a sales representative in the pharmaceutical industry, and I had to take time away from my business to mentally recover. The reason I remember everything word for word is that I had to repeat it so many times to detectives, lawyers, and the court. I still have the cards he left me. So much for him making me happy for the rest of my life. Story 39. The last guy I dated had no motivation to function as an independent adult. He didn't know how to cook. His mother still did his laundry, and he was unhelpful in any situation that required basic handy skills. He was shocked when I told him I had spent an afternoon changing the bathroom faucet in my apartment because you need a plumber for that. A couple of weeks later, I calmly explained that I couldn't spend any more of my time thinking about what he would be like if we were raising children or managing our own home. Story 40. She was involved with her bosses. It's impressive how quickly one can advance in their career when using connections. Story 41. He called me a derogatory term in public loud enough for people to turn around and stare at me. When I brought it up later and insisted that we talk about it, he said I ruined the party he was preparing for and blamed me for not addressing it in the moment, calling me childish. Breaking up with him was such a relief. Lesson learned. Story 42. When he yelled at the waitress because his steak was medium instead of medium rare, I didn't want to stick around to see what else would set him off if he couldn't handle a minor inconvenience. Story 43. He was texting his mother during our date, informing her on how it was going. Then I realized she was saved in his phone as Mommy. He also asked a lot about children, which at first felt a little strange, but we ended up having a really nice conversation about it. It was good to see where we both stood on the topic. Unfortunately, I knew he was updating his mother about it. Story 44. I refused to let him use the dildo on me. I found it hidden in our room months later. Story 45. He started by disrespecting my hobbies and the things I like. When it reached a point where I couldn't even wear a shirt related to them because he would get angry and yell at me, I knew I had to leave. Story 46. We were in Nashville for New Year's Eve and witnessed a sexual assault in real time. I intervened, and he complained as if he were a child, claiming that I made the night about her. There are many complexities to that situation. I never spoke to him again after that. Story 47. I found out she tried to run over her ex because he was sleeping with another girl after they broke up. That was also when I discovered firsthand that women can be stalkers too. Story 48. Yelling at me in public, I confronted him about something that was bothering me. I caught him in lies. He started to raise his voice and swear at me in the shops. I immediately left that relationship. It makes me question what he might have been capable of doing to me behind closed doors. It was really scary. Story 49. My precious dog had an accident in the house. He texted me at work to let me know. Then he added, I didn't hit her though. It never even crossed my mind that he would have hit her until he said that. Goodbye. Story 50. Validating the betrayal within her friendship circle. Victim mentality. Any indication that she desires a partner for a particular lifestyle. Feeling entitled to things that have not been earned. Story 51. He yelled at a waitress over a minor mistake with his order, creating a full public meltdown. I have never been so embarrassed in my life. I paid for my meal, apologized to the staff, and blocked his number in the parking lot. Story 52. I am a woman with a pretty thin build. I was 21 at the time and weighed 105 pounds. I had a boyfriend who took me to Andy's ice cream, allowed me to order a chocolate shake, and then while I was enjoying it, told me that I was chubby and that he couldn't continue to be with me unless I started working out with him. I broke up with him. It would have been insulting regardless, but the fact that I was at the healthiest weight I had ever been after struggling with binge eating and anorexia made it clear that it was time to let him go. Story 53. Do not interpret my no as a maybe. It could simply be my response to a particular event. Talk to me and share your thoughts, but do not attempt to guilt me or invalidate my decision. I also dislike it when someone labels me as too girly for expressing my thoughts. Please stop and respect my feelings. Story 54. Realizing he wasn't trying to give me Benadryl and liquor one day, but every day of the week, even though he was a sober individual. Story 55. He didn't listen when I said no, and he was one of the most emotionally unintelligent people I know, which I couldn't handle. After the breakup, I found out that he was insulting my friend's appearance behind my back, and because of that, I was more than confident in my decision. Story 56. I was the red flag. She was a single mother. I was fine with her being busy at first. I liked that I could do my own thing, and we would always come together. However, within 6 months, it started to get to me. I should have known that neither of us was ready at that point and should have called it off, at least temporarily. I became overbearing and started to become needy. As a man, I had never really been like that. But when you barely get one night out together for a few hours each month, you begin to wonder where your place is and what you're supposed to be doing. I suppose she had her own red flags, and I should have recognized that and exited gracefully. Instead, because I really loved her, I kept going despite knowing deep down that it wasn't working. My biggest mistake was telling her I felt alone over the phone. I know she perceived that as total neediness and weakness, but I didn't mean it in a way that implied I felt lonely and needed her with me all the time. I meant that I felt alone in the relationship. It felt one-sided. I needed some kind of reciprocation. Oh well, too little, too late. It ended messily when we could have remained friends for a later time. You live and you learn. Story 57. Not treating their own children well, including being mean to them, ignoring them completely, and constantly passing them off to caregivers so the parent can party. Story 58. When I say, I don't do this because of this and it's a hard boundary, they respond, oh, but you'll do that for me eventually, right? Did you not just hear what I said? Now, story 59. I say I don't want to engage in a sexual position, and he gets angry in bed and starts arguing with me. Or he says, I'll just wait until next time when you're drunk. Story 60. There is no enthusiasm about spending time together, no effort to connect. It feels like being too cool or too proud to express excitement. I stopped playing games when I was 22. Story 61. The relationship was in the first date stage, and she was very rude to the waitress at the restaurant several times. Instead of paying for her meal, I split the bill and gave the waitress a $40 tip when I was paying for my half. I have never understood why people can be so rude to servers. This relationship never went past the first date. Story 62. I went out for dinner with a couple of good friends. It got late, and around 3 a.m., one of them, a guy, drove me home because I was broke and couldn't afford a rideshare. The next morning, I told my boyfriend how kind that friend had been. His reaction was to scream at me, calling me a filthy whore. And he said it would have been better if I had walked home instead of accepting a ride from a friend. That was the moment I got up, walked away, and never looked back. No one who truly loves you will make you feel ashamed for being treated with kindness. Story 63. Bringing up every alleged wrong you've ever done in every conflict to make you back down is detrimental. Keeping score is extremely toxic. Focus on the issue at hand, resolve the problem, and move forward. Story 64. They talk about themselves continuously, never ask me questions about myself, or listen when I try to contribute to the conversation. Story 65. Micromanaging small aspects of life, such as asking me to cut the onions and then watching me do it, only to try to correct my technique. He also tells me what kind of toothpaste he prefers and gets upset when I don't replace mine with that specific kind. I lost my patience with him quickly. Story 66. She bit my lip during intimacy really hard. I told her it hurt and not to do it again. She laughed and immediately did it again. Story 67. I had fallen the year before and broke my nose. He knew I was self-conscious about it, so he made a joke, upsetting me. I told him, and then he did it again. So I ended it. Looking back, he was not a good person, and I always made excuses for him. It was a really self-destructive period in my life, so I'm glad I walked away then. He would have destroyed my self-esteem if I had stayed. Story 68. I stopped whatever this was before it turned into a relationship. A guy I used to work with, who I thought was really attractive and nice, found me online and messaged me a few months after I left the job. He told me he left the company too and then became extremely flirtatious, to the point that I began questioning what kind of person he really was. Friends advised me that it was probably harmless flirting, but I was right to be cautious. All he wanted was explicit photos, even though I had previously told him that if we were to start dating, it would be for a real relationship. He clearly did not respect my boundaries and kept being pushy, so I told him, as nicely as possible, to leave me alone. I should have known he was bad news since that job felt like walking into a snake pit. Story 69. Wouldn't discuss preferences, so he would randomly slap my backside hard during intimacy and choke me or pull my hair. It was shocking at the time. He never asked for consent. I left him. Story 70. He was putting his hands on me and starting to go after our child. It was an easy decision, but it was economically crippling. However, we got through it. Story 71. We were driving when he casually told me a story about how he accidentally got a girl pregnant from a one-night stand and threatened her if she terminated the pregnancy. He was seething with anger while telling me, and all my alarm bells started going off. I quickly ended the relationship after we reached our destination. Story 72. I was a passenger in a car driven by my boyfriend at the time. A Latino man cut us off, and my boyfriend yelled out his open window, "Go back to your country." First, I was completely unaware of any racist tendencies. Second, I wasn't going to manage his anger issues. Third, he was a closet crossdresser, and conversations after this incident revealed many hypocritical ideas. Story 73. I wear hearing aids, which my partner knows, but I sometimes struggle to hear people when they talk softly. My ex often spoke softly when he was tired. The first time I interrupted him during one of his stories, I asked him to repeat it louder. This caused him to lose his train of thought because he became overwhelmed by the interruption, which I understand can happen. Later on, I made an effort to give him time to finish his story before asking if he could tell it again without interruption, as I knew it could cause him to lose his narrative. Unfortunately, there was another instance where I had similar difficulty. I let him talk while I listened closely, especially since we were in the bedroom where there weren't many other noises. However, I still struggled to hear him, so I asked if he could repeat it louder. He responded by saying I should have listened better. I truly did my best to focus, but his volume seemed almost muted to me. In hindsight, there were many red flags that I did not notice initially. Story 74. Bringing up an ex once or twice should be acceptable, but anything beyond that indicates a lingering attachment. Constantly being on the phone can also be a red flag. A total lack of reciprocation of affection is concerning. Additionally, Not being upfront about already having a partner when someone makes advances is not acceptable. I instantly distance myself when I encounter any of these behaviors. I do not have time for people who are not genuinely present. Story 75. I was on a road trip with my girlfriend and my 9 and 10-year-old daughters. We stopped for a bathroom break, and before hitting the road again, my girlfriend and I shared a quick kiss. My 9-year-old reacted with a disgusted, "You," to which my girlfriend responded by giving my daughter the middle finger. That was the end of that relationship. Story 76. They don't ask me a single question about myself in conversation. Sadly, 95% of people are like this. Story 77. She arrived at my house unannounced and extremely intoxicated. To make matters worse, she drove 20 miles in that condition to get there. Story 78. They claimed that herpes could be cured with magnets because they saw a video on YouTube and mentioned they were an irresponsible parent. Story 79. When I confronted him about the empty alcohol bottles I found in the center console of his car, he outright denied their presence. I questioned him because the next time I looked into his center console, they were both gone. I will never trust an alcoholic again. They are often dishonest and untrustworthy. Story 80. I didn't break up with him at that time, but I should have. I dated a boy in high school and went over to his house for dinner one night. His home life was strange to me, but I didn't think much of it at the time. That night at dinner, his mom was prepping stuff in the kitchen, and she dropped a plastic cup of ice. It was just ice on the ground, but she completely froze, started shaking and crying, and apologizing to her husband. "I'm so sorry. It was an accident. I'm so sorry. Let me clean this up." Meanwhile, she was sobbing, and he was like, "Oh, it's fine." I was so confused because I was like, "It's just ice. Are you okay?" 16-year-old me had no idea that she was a battered woman. The biggest through line of the whole relationship was, "I'm going to take you away from your family, and they'll have to ask me to see you instead of the other way around." I had a really difficult home life, so it seemed like a Prince Charming saving me thing. Keep in mind this was my first boyfriend, and I had no idea this was strange. The relationship ended about a month later after I found out he cheated on me at the insistence of his family because, wait for it, I had my phone taken away. He and his mother started messaging my mom, imploring her to give me my phone back because it wasn't fair. She refused, so his mom said he needed to find someone at their church who would submit to him the way a woman should. They set him up on a date with a girl from their church who was in my grade. He was a grade below me, and they were also deeply entrenched in the Pentecostal church while I did not grow up religious at all. Additionally, I have no issue with Pentecostal beliefs, but he went to an extreme church that practiced with snakes. Then his mom texted my mom, saying we needed to break up, and my mom was like, "Tell your son to grow a pair and tell my daughter himself," which did not go over well. She called my mom a dumb fat name even though she was over 400 pounds and chronically unemployed. He called me a disgusting person who never deserved love. I literally did nothing but get my phone taken away. I found out he threw an axe at the girl he dated after me while she was running away from him. She was not harmed, thank God. But what on earth? Story 81. This person joked about how fun it was to wear a mask and use a baseball bat to scare his girlfriend awake at night. Story 82. He got upset and went to the bathroom and punched a hole in my wall. I was told I am uppity because I didn't want him to refer to me as bruh. Another guy I met in the first week asked why I didn't have a more expensive car based on my career. My car is paid for, by the way, but okay. Spend more money to look a certain way. Makes sense, right? When he mentioned why I didn't do something the way his ex-wife did, I was taken aback. Another guy, in our first conversation, criticized the mother of his child for putting him on child support. His son was 20. These weren't relationships, but they were definitely red flags for me to exit immediately. I have so many more instances. Ugh. Story 83. Had someone walk right up to me and make a mess on the floor. I kid you not. I hadn't even said a word to her yet. We decided to adopt a cat instead, right on the spot. Story 84. We dated for 2 months. I was emotionally exhausted and snapped at him once. He reacted strongly and said some of the cruelest things I have ever heard in 35 years. Why was I exhausted and why did I snap? My dad had died the week before. Story 85. Saying, I love you, just 2 weeks after you start talking seems premature. How can you truly love someone right away when you don't even know them? Especially if that person has a tendency to lie. Story 86. The inability to get along with anyone in my universe. Family, friends, colleagues, didn't matter. It was just her and me, and no one else could be around. Story 87. We had been talking for several weeks and were making plans to meet. He decided to block me and ignored my messages for 2 days because he wanted to see if I would care. I was definitely uncertain about it and pulled back significantly. When he tried it a second time, I decided to block him. I do not have time for that nonsense. Story 88. Constant text messages after work. She would leave the room to read or answer them and always deleted them before she came back. Story 89. When they buy an extravagant gift on day one or within a few weeks of knowing you, they are making you feel indebted to them, and the more you accept, the more they will expect from you. Story 90. On our anniversary, we were packing to leave for Europe the next day. I took out the gifts I bought for him, and he looked me in the eye and said, "You haven't done anything to deserve a gift lately." I moved out as soon as I found a place after we returned from Europe. Story 91. She was really interested in me when she wanted sex, but the next morning she thought we should take things slow and not rush. That lasted for a few days. At some point, I realized that I didn't like her. I only liked her when she was feeling frisky. Story 92. I discovered he moved to my state and took a cash job to avoid paying child support. Fortunately, I had only been dating him for a month or two. Story 93. Being unkind to their mother. If a man treats his mother poorly, it is almost a guarantee he treats any other woman in his life the same way, if not worse. Story 94. He purposely failed his senior year to stay in school with me. He could smoke cigarettes, provided he was not on school grounds. Story 95. Husband follows a female colleague with whom he should keep a distance on Instagram. She follows him back. When asked, he said it happened by mistake while scrolling. I waited for at least 10 days before asking. He is very tech-savvy. All friends and family ask him for help. When I asked him why he didn't unfollow her, he said he didn't know how to do it. Story 96. I had a girlfriend who slapped me in the face once. She said she was only joking. I gave her the benefit of the doubt but told her if it happened again, we were done. Fast forward a week or so, and we were heading to a friend's event. In the car, she smacked me again. I immediately turned the car around and dropped her home. I never spoke to her again. Story 97. This man was completely helpless and overwhelmed by the simplest tasks. He had no street smarts whatsoever. Story 98. I realized he was an alcoholic. My parents were alcoholics, as was my brother. I cannot have that in my life. Story 99. I was the problem. I had codependency issues that I didn't communicate clearly, which led to frustration and hurtful behavior. That is not okay. I will grieve this forever, especially because I hurt him. I understand I deserve to be left, and I will work on myself as much as I can. Story 100. Suddenly became emotionally abusive and developed a victim complex. Everything was my fault and I was labeled negatively. He also made my disability feel like a burden to him. Story 101. She admitted to voting exactly as her father did and that he checked her mail-in ballot to ensure she was voting correctly. All decisions she made were influenced by him. He would turn off the Wi-Fi every night at 10 p.m. to control her sleep schedule. She was almost 30. Absolutely not. Story 102. My boyfriend was in his early 20s. He was a sweet guy until he started stealing, beginning with small items like silverware from restaurants. This behavior progressed to dining and dashing with his friends. I ended the relationship after he committed a gas drive-off with me in the car, and we were subsequently stopped by a state trooper. I later found out that he served years in prison for armed burglary and has since become an extremely hard-right supporter of Donald Trump. I consider myself lucky to have avoided a worse situation. Story 103. Not a relationship, but I went on 2 dates with a guy. On the second date, He told me a story about how he punched a hole in the wall during an argument with his last girlfriend. I ended things the next day. I saw it as him testing the waters and subconsciously telling me what to expect if I continued to date him. Story 104. One night, he was drunk and angry. He choked me and threw me out of his apartment at 3 a.m. The next morning, his response was, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." I shouldn't have made him angry. Story 105. The person I dated cried on the bathroom floor when I told him his personal hygiene needed improvement and asked him to brush his teeth daily. He claimed that he had never been taught how to care for himself, but the rest of his family was always clean and well-groomed. Story 106. Holding the partner accountable for unhappiness in life and expecting to solve everything for them is exhausting. Story 107. I started seeing my roommate's sister after she expressed her feelings for me. A couple of weeks into the relationship, she began telling me that she loved me and started skipping work to be at my apartment. She found out what time I would be home and would be waiting for me. I had a routine of smoking a little and showering before doing anything else, as I worked in construction, so I was pretty tired after getting off work. I had a trip planned with my cousins to go camping, and she was trying to join us, even calling off work for it after skipping every other shift that week. I left my charger at home so I could have a little break. When I got back that Monday evening, she decided to end things. Thank goodness for that. Story 108. His sister, with whom he was very close, told me I deserved to be treated better by a partner and that I should end the relationship. We had dated for about 4 years, and he turned out to be a selfish, jealous, and manipulative man. Kind of blew my mind. She was really cool, about 10 years older than us, divorced after a difficult marriage, and looking out for a younger girl. Even if I was her brother's girlfriend, I still appreciate her for that because she was right and I ended the relationship shortly after. Story 109. Being second to his friends. Every time a friend needed him, I was put on the back burner. It didn't matter what it was. His friend's needs came before mine. I had to leave my birthday party early because his friend called saying he needed him. It turned out it was just a ruse to get him to come home earlier. Story 110. The girl had 9 cats. We were walking to her apartment after a great date, and in the window were 3 cats. Then a 4th appeared. A few steps later, 3 more appeared, and then the last one I saw hopped up. Nobody sane has more than 9 cats. Story 111. When I was around 18, I met someone on a dating app. We texted a lot before actually meeting, especially because it was during COVID-19, and he was really nice and fun to talk to. One time, I sneaked him inside, and we ended up having sex. It was not that great, but it wasn't bad either, though we did not use protection. One thing you should know about me is that I had been having unprotected sex for a while because I didn't value myself that much. My mom taught me that if I didn't do it during my fertile period and he pulled out, then it was mostly safe. Of course, I know that having unprotected sex with strangers is not safe regardless of pregnancy. As I remember, we had another date like this, but when we started discussing the third one over text, I told him I would like him to wear a condom this time since I was getting close to my fertile period, and I was a bit scared. He was not happy about it and started bargaining. When I didn't budge, he complained that it would be worse for him and that he didn't enjoy our last encounters much either because I was too small, and he needed to hold back. He did climax multiple times, but whatever. He also mentioned my bed was too small and that sleeping there was uncomfortable. He began to whine about things I literally cannot control, and I ended up texting him to leave me alone, and we never met again. He apologized after a while, but I am glad I had the self-confidence to never meet him again. Story 112. I was a single mother with 2 small children, and I would regularly go over to a married friend's house. They had similarly aged kids, so all the children would play together. One was a stay-at-home mom, and the other worked outside the home. I was friends with both. Sometimes the kids would play so well that they would invite us to stay for dinner. We went on a couple of day trips together with the children. When the man I was dating found out that my friends were 2 mothers, he looked at me and exclaimed, "You bring your kids over there?" I was naively confused by such a bizarre question, and our relationship basically ended after he began lecturing me about how he would never be okay with that. Story 113. She always checked my phone if I left it lying around. I would wake up from a nap to find her looking through it. I gave her the passcode because I had nothing to hide. When I finally had enough, I asked her to show me her phone, but she refused and guarded it. Story 114. When he presented a ring after less than 2 weeks of dating, I was not expecting or ready for that. After I ended the relationship, I discovered that he had a serious alcohol problem. He eventually married a young woman and would physically abuse her. Always trust your instincts. Story 115. I encountered this phenomenon often during my online dating experience. I refer to it as the "what have you done for me lately" syndrome. This describes a person who focuses solely on the most recent mistake, disregarding all the positive things you have done. That mistake is the only thing that matters to them. I experienced this about 6 months into a relationship. Both of us were in the military, and she was about to go on a deployment. I spent a week with her before she left, even driving her around in a rental car after my own car broke down. When she was preparing for deployment, I was busy repairing my vehicle. She called and asked me to drive roughly an hour to see her. I declined, explaining that I needed to get my car fixed. She reacted poorly and accused me of not caring about her. As a result, I ended the relationship. A person like that will never be satisfied with what you do for them. Story 116. He wanted me to spend the night with him at his friend's Airbnb, and we had not even spent time at each other's places yet. Felt very strange, and I had a bad feeling about it. Story 117. It wasn't a relationship but more like a casual fling. When he kissed me, he gripped my cheeks quite hard with one hand, and I did not appreciate how aggressive it was. At that point, I didn't know him well, so I was concerned about how things might progress. I had just ended an abusive relationship, so that was a significant red flag for me. Story 118. He kept staring at women while we were together. I don't mean just checking them out. It was the continual turning of his neck right in front of me, looking at the same women. Then it happened with another, then another, too many to count. I brought it up several times, but he kept saying I was imagining it. He toned it down, but then he started sneaking glances. Nothing changed. Out of respect for myself, I left. The worst part is that he prides himself on being a gentleman. He opens doors for me, but then I noticed he walked behind me to open the door and used that as an opportunity to stare at women without me noticing. I began to see through all the pretense. His gentlemanly ways were all performative. They didn't come from a genuine place. I really wish I hadn't given him the benefit of the doubt. I loved him deeply and gave everything to this man. Feels like such a betrayal. Story 119. In my early 20s, I was dating a girl. We were hanging out when it was time for me to head to work. I told her it was time to get dressed and leave, but she was acting playfully and stalling. In a cartoonishly aggressive way, I told her to hurry up. She started crying because she thought I was angry at her. That was how her dad sounded. I instantly realized there were some family issues at home, and I knew I was not emotionally mature enough to handle them. I started looking for a way out immediately and still feel guilty that I couldn't help back then. Story 120. They said they loved me after a week. We saw each other twice. Then they cried when I said it was far too soon and proceeded to beg me to kiss them. We were teenagers, but that was not for me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.